There's a sound a piece of firewood makes when it's ready to burn. You knock two sticks together, and instead of a dull thud, you get a sharp crack, near like a bat hitting a ball. My grandfather could walk down a woodpile, knocking sticks, and tell you which rick would heat the house come January, and which one would sit in the stove and hiss and smoke and do next to nothing. Because here's a thing most folks who buy their wood never learn. Wet wood doesn't just burn poorly. It hardly heats at all. You can stack a cord of it, feed it all night, and freeze, because near every bit of that fire's strength goes to boiling the water out before it can ever warm your room. And down below the house, in the cellar, that same enemy, damp, was busy spoiling the potatoes and turning the whole place sour and musty. The old-timers beat both, the wet woodpile and the damp cellar, without a single machine plugged in anywhere. And the woodpile part comes down to one rule most people break without knowing it. I'll give it to you plain in a minute. I'm Harlan. I've heated with wood the better part of my life, and I've kept a root cellar going too. And I can tell you the old ways, with both, still beat anything you can buy. Let's start with the wood, because a dry woodpile is the difference between a warm house and a cold one, and it costs nothing but knowing how. First truth. Fresh-cut wood, what we call green wood, is near half water by weight. You cannot burn it worth a lick. It's got to dry, and drying wood has a name: seasoning. And seasoning takes real time, more than a season, more than most folks are patient for. A hardwood like oak wants a good year in the open air, sometimes two. Even a quicker wood wants most of a year. So the first rule of a dry woodpile is the one nobody wants to hear. You're not stacking wood for this winter. You're stacking it for next winter. The man who's warm in January is the man who cut his wood a year and a half back. Get a year ahead, and you'll never burn wet wood again. Now, how you stack it decides whether it seasons or just sits there rotting. And here's the rule most people break. They stack their wood right down on the dirt. Never do it. The ground is a sponge. It'll wick damp straight up into that bottom row all year long, and you'll pull out punky, rotten sticks come winter. Get the wood up off the ground. A couple of old fence rails laid down, a row of scrap boards, a few flat stones, a pair of split poles, anything to make an inch or two of air between the dirt and the wood. My grandfather laid 2 long rails and stacked on top of those, and the bottom row stayed as sound as the top. Next, and this is the one folks get backwards, is the covering. The instinct is to throw a tarp right over the whole pile, sides and all, wrap it up snug like a Christmas present, keep the rain off. And you've just built yourself a sweat lodge. Wood needs to breathe to dry. It's letting water out of every face of every stick, and that damp air has to carry off on the breeze. Wrap the pile tight, and you trap all that moisture inside, and the wood sits there stewing in its own damp and never seasons. So here's the rule. Cover the top, leave the sides open. Only the top. A sheet of tin, a few boards, a tarp weighted down, but only over the crown, so the rain and snow run off the top while the wind still blows clean through the sides and ends. Top dry, sides open. Say it to yourself every time you cover a pile. A few more things my grandfather did, and every one earns its keep. He stacked in a single row where he could, not a big, deep block, because a single row dries from both sides and seasons near twice as fast. He put the pile where the sun and the wind could find it, out in the open, not tucked in the shade behind the barn where the air sits still. He split the wood before stacking it, not after, because a round log with the bark all the way around holds its water like a jug, while a split piece has its bare face open to the wind. And bark, remember, is the tree's own raincoat. It's built to keep water out, which means it keeps water in just the same. And he stacked with a little gap between the sticks, not jammed tight, so the air could wander through. A woodpile you can see daylight through is a woodpile that's drying. Last thing on wood, and it's the one that'll save your back and your house both. The wood you're going to burn this week, you bring inside a few days early and set by the stove to warm and dry that last bit. But the big pile, the seasoning pile, the year's supply, that stays outside. Do not stack a great heap of wood up against the side of your house, and for certain, not inside against a wall. I know it looks handy, but a big wood pile against the house holds damp against your wall, and it's a highway for every mouse, spider, and wood bug looking for a way in. Pile's job is outside. Only the week's worth comes in. If you're getting something worth having out of this, do me the kindness of tapping subscribe. Costs you not one thing, and it tells me to keep these old ways coming. I've got a lifetime of them yet to hand down. All right, down the stairs we go, into the cellar, because the same enemy that ruins a woodpile, damp, is what turns a good cellar sour. But here's where it gets interesting, because a root cellar is a puzzle. You want it cool and a little bit humid to keep your potatoes and apples and carrots from shriveling up. But you do not want it wet and stale, or everything molds and rots, and the whole place goes musty. Cool, a little damp, but moving and sweet. That's the target. Here's how the old folks hit it. The first key, and the one everybody misses, is air. A cellar needs to breathe, same as a woodpile, same as the whole house. A sealed cellar goes stale and musty every time, because the damp that comes up out of the ground and off the vegetables has nowhere to go, so it just hangs there and feeds the mold. The old cellars had two vents, a low one and a high one. And this is the clever part. Cool, fresh air comes in the low vent, and the old, stale, damp air, which has warmed a touch and risen, goes out the high vent. It's the same chimney trick I showed you with the windows, working down in the ground. You crack those vents open on a cool, dry night and let the cellar flush itself out, and you ease them shut against a hot, muggy day or a hard freeze. A cellar that breathes stays sweet. A cellar that's shut up goes bad. Second, you manage the damp itself, and you do it with cheap old things. For a dirt floor cellar that runs too wet, a bad, damp corner, the old-timers set out a wide pan of plain wood ashes from the stove, or a box of lime, or even a bucket of charcoal from the fire. Every one of those pulls water out of the air and holds it, and pulls the musty smell out right along with it. When the ashes get damp through, you swap them for dry and toss the old ones on the garden. Costs you nothing but the walk. On the other hand, if your cellar runs too dry and your vegetables are going soft and wrinkled, you do the opposite. You set out a pan of water, or you lay a damp burlap sack over the potato bin to put a little moisture back in the air. See, it's a balance you tend, not a machine you set and forget. Third, keep the water out from the start. Most of a wet cellar's trouble walks in from outside, same as the mold I showed you last time. Make sure the ground outside slopes away from the house, so rain runs off instead of soaking down into your cellar walls. Keep the gutters clean and the downspouts carrying water well clear of the foundation. A cellar sits down in the wet ground by its nature, so your whole job is to not give it one drop more than it's already got. And a few keeping tricks the old folks swore by. Store your different vegetables apart, because some, like apples, breathe out a thing into the air that makes potatoes sprout and go off faster. So you keep the apples at the far end from the potatoes. Don't wash your vegetables before you store them. Just brush the loose dirt off, because a skin of dry dirt protects them, and washing leaves a damp that starts them rotting. Never store a bruised or nicked one in with the good, because one bad apple truly does spoil the barrel. The rot spreads right down the row. Lay them in dry sand or straw in a crate so they're not touching. And walk your cellar of an evening now and again with a lamp, and pull out any that's turned before it can take its neighbors with it. Now let me be square with you, as I always am. These old ways work, and they kept families fed and warm for 200 years. But they ask something of you that a machine doesn't. They ask attention. You have to walk the woodpile, crack the vents on the right night, swap the ashes, pull the bad potato. A dehumidifier with a plug will hold a cellar steadier than a pan of ashes, no argument, if you've got the outlet and don't mind the power bill. What I'm handing you is the way that costs no money and no electricity, the way that still works when the power's out, and the way our people relied on. It trades a little of your daily notice for a lot of saved money. To my mind, on a homestead, that's a fine trade. But you should know the shape of it going in. So there's the whole of it. For the wood, get a year ahead. Stack it up off the ground. Cover only the top and leave the sides open to the wind. Split it and single row it in the sun. For the cellar, let it breathe through a low vent and a high one. Tend the damp with ashes or a pan of water, depending which way it's leaning. Keep the outside water away, and store your crop dry, apart, and watched. Not a machine in the lot, just knowing and a little tending. That knock of 2 dry sticks come January is the sound of a job done right back in summer. If you heat with wood or keep a cellar and you've got a trick of your own, put it in the comments below. I read every one, and I've picked up plenty down there. In the next video, I'll show you why the old folks never bought a paper towel in their lives, and what they used instead that worked better and cost nothing at all. Until then, take care of yourselves, and remember, the porch light's always on.